bugger.
The Red Ape Family is an interesting piece of work. The first episode of the series has aired recently and is causing quite a stir among both NFT bros as well as the internet lay people who are interested in either instigating fights or simply watching how things play out. And of course, that's just a perfect storm for someone like me who's trying to grow an audience. I'm not exactly a professional writer or anything, but I've taken a couple classes on the subject and I've written a fair amount of short stories myself, so I think I have a good grasp on what can make or break a story. So I kind of want to try and give my piece on how the Red Ape Family is flawed. For those of you who haven't been paying attention to the whole non-fungible token trend, NFTs are essentially pictures you can buy on the internet. Of course, you can screenshot an NFT and have a copy of it, but actually purchasing one essentially gives you a unique key to show that you own the closest thing to an original copy of it. Arguably the most popular group of NFTs are those that belong to Bored Ape Yacht Club, or BAYC. So a team of creators came together to make the Red Ape Family, a cartoon based off of these NFTs. This makes them the first cartoon to be based on non-fungible tokens, a fact that they are very, very proud of. Now, this is low-hanging fruit, I know, but I have like 20 subscribers, so I kinda need this. Also, this show has a good amount of curse words in it. I know that's a given on the internet, but I have family who watch this, so I figured I'd just say that for their sake. Anyway, I want to further preface this by saying that I really wanted to talk to the creators of the show before making this video. I tried joining the Red Ape Family Discord, but you apparently have to buy an NFT to be verified and let in, so I was banned pretty swiftly. A friend of mine got into the same Discord. She didn't buy an NFT either, so she was also banned, but she did manage to get the identities of the showrunners for me, and I tracked them down on Twitter and DM'd whoever I could. I've yet to get a response from anyone. I'd like to get a grasp on how things were and are behind the scenes. Most of my questions tackle that, so perhaps if this video blows up, the showrunners will actually be interested in doing an interview with me. Made for a pretty fun follow-up video, eh? So I'm not saying you should share this video around, but I'd really appreciate it, and maybe subscribe while you're here. We're on the road to 100, which isn't much, but it'd be cool to hit 3 digits. Nice little goal for the start of 2022, I guess. We open with a titular Red Ape Family and a spaceship leaving Earth, which I guess is in line with what the trailer has told us.
It's the year 2130. Earth is dying. Humans fucked up real bad. Michael Jackson bad.
We also see some,
Stupid, nonsensical, goddamn Yetis are at it again.
yeah, those. World building, I guess. It's just an odd scene, and I'm not sure why it needs to be here. What makes this whole thing even stranger is the fact that we don't even stay in the spot for long, because we're taken to a flashback of the main character, I think his name is Chunky, raiding a museum? It's not exactly disclosed what this place is or why he's breaking in, but he breaks in, steals a gold USB, robot guard guys and robot dogs show up to apprehend him, and a bland fight happens. That's it. The show refuses to elaborate further. I think a scene or two contextualizing this whole thing afterward would have been a great move. We could have Chunky's wife asking him why he's doing this again, and that taking historical pieces from museums and selling them back to them is wrong. Chunky could calm her down and hand her the gold USB he pilfered, asking if it's worth anything. This could then feed into the whole scene we actually get in the show, where she says the USB is actually really valuable, as it holds an NFT even more valuable than the entirety of Paris. I'd personally have her plug into a computer or something to figure that out, but of course the show just has her take one glance at it and automatically know what it is. Anyway, this isn't made 100% clear, but Chunky kinda got his family into a lot of heat for his theft, so they need to fly off-world to Mars. So their getaway ship shows up, the Musk 1, nice pandering to the multi-billionaire, very subtle. Then we get a shot of some of the RoboCop guys that Chunky beat up at the museum, but we never see them giving chase outside this one scene. And then we get a cut of 2 human dudes watching the apes flying off. Traff has a lot of extras that briefly show up for no reason, but these 2 seem like they're going to be important later. This isn't the only time Traff does this, and I actually think it's kinda cool. Weirdly enough, I'm looking forward to seeing if these 2 dudes show up again in episode 2 and if they bring anything to the story. This is where I think the opening should have been. Show the apes flying off Earth, cut to them dealing with the space yetis right here. The museum scene, lazy and stiff as it is, should have been Traff's opening scene. It tells us a lot about the world we're dealing with. Chunky's some kind of badass thief, and these robo-dudes are this cartoon stormtroopers, and NFTs have grown to be so popular they've ended up in museums for some reason. This, however, this tells us nothing. Cut to them at an airport or a spaceport on Mars. Really unfunny antics ensue. We get a tad bit of world building. The Red Apes find their house on Mars. We get teased to another pair of important characters, and that's episode 1. I would put more detail into the summary of these scenes, but that's what this next segment's for. Traff seems to be caught up in the 2 worst possible pitfalls for an adult comedy. Those 2 pitfalls are thinking random stuff is funny, and that shoving curse words and crude humor into everything will get laughs out of viewers. The first half manifests in places where the characters just do things for no reason. Like, there's this one scene where the apes get their gravity sneakers and they just slap each other. And there's just a jump cut without any explanation. What? The other places where the humor gets spontaneous are unintentional, I think. Like, there's this one part in the museum scene where Chunky looks at an ape NFT of the Mona Lisa, which ironically has way more personality than any of the NFTs Bored Ape Yacht Club is actually selling. And he looks at it, and he goes,
Bigger than I thought.
And maybe they thought this would be witty, but like, why is the image so small? Why did he think it would be smaller? I'm not laughing, I'm just scratching my head. It makes you question things more than it actually makes you laugh. There's also this thing all the voice actors do, which I think is supposed to be funny, but they just make these really uncanny noises.
Whatever gets me paid, right? Honey, would the husband you idolize and adore let you down? Don't answer that. Our family doctor / hypnotherapist / the last guest you want at a dinner party. Sick. Size 14 and 200 kg, my man. What that?
Like, no real human being talks like this, and I know they're, like, apes or whatever, but people aren't going to relate to them if they talk like that. The only people who would actually derive any joy from seeing these characters would be the folks who owned their NFT equivalents, and even then it would just be them looking at their character and going, oh hey, I own that. The comedy's just a big miss, I guess. I'm not exactly a comedian, so I don't know how I do a much better job. I just know it's very easy to make me laugh, and I ain't laughing when I watch this. Now, I am by no means an authority in comedy, but one thing I like to think I'm good at picking apart is art. And I mean, I think anyone with a pattern-seeking brain can see the flaws in this show. I mean, they're pretty blatant. In the museum scene, Chunky walks through a laser and spots a sign with a typo reading, "No humans detacted." These 2 goofs happen within like 5 seconds of each other too. Like, one happens, and then the other happens in literally the next scene. I did not splice this clip together for convenience, this is literally what happens in the show. Now, while we're at the museum scene, I want to touch on the composition of the scene and its animation quality, since this is the one that the showrunners really want to use to showcase it. I took a little while to try and put what I find wrong with this scene into words, but I think showing this would be more effective than talking about it. Now, it's clear that Traff wanted this scene to be an action scene, but it doesn't really hold a candle toward what I just showed. It's from another web series, Ruby, and this is just one of the trailers. Though they are stiff in some places, I'll admit, a passing glance will tell you that Ruby is far more fluid and expressive in her movements than Chunky. Now granted, Ruby is a web series focused on cute anime girls fighting shadow demons, so it makes sense that it would be very good at portraying that. That's kind of its thing. The main reason I bring this up, though, is because this was by no means something that was professionally made. The only animators credited for the first scene of RWBY are Shane Newville, Jordan Swears, and of course the late legend Monty Oum. This wasn't a big team, it was just 3 dudes, and even then, Jordan is only credited for the 2D assets in the first season, and on top of that, Monty was the one who animated a bulk of the fight scenes. So, if a pair of animators could do this, why did Traff, which has like 3 times as many animators, end up producing this? I understand Traff is at least supposed to be a comedy. Trust me, we already discussed why it's not. But so much more effort could have gone into making this fight scene more visually appealing. I mean, this is the clip that everyone advertising the cartoon shows off, so why did they make it so uninspiring? So, I think I've established that this show ends up doing a lot of things in a bit of a crappy way, but there's still a laundry list of things I could go over. I already have the script to be like 8 pages long though, so I'm gonna try and keep things brief. Just trust me when I say that for the sake of my own time and sanity, I'm holding myself back from bringing up every way this show cuts corners and spits in the face of animation itself. First off, the soundtrack is terrible. It has, like, only 2 tracks. They vary sometimes, but the instruments and the melodies are essentially the same. Here's a snippet of both. Now you can watch this show on mute and miss absolutely nothing. Along with the limited soundtrack, I think they're also recycling voice lines, like... Fuck! Fuck! I'm not the only one who thinks those are at least similar, right? All the characters are very clearly based off of Bored Apes bases. All the lip movements can be found on the actual NFTs. In classic NFT fashion, the show takes the effort of other artists and vehemently refuses to develop its own identity. Every character we've met outside of Chunky and his wife add absolutely nothing to the story, and that's really saying something because the 2 characters I just mentioned are forgettable on their own. I've watched this one episode multiple times over, and I still don't remember the wife's name. She has one, I just can't be bothered to remember it. One-note characters are cool if they're only around for 1 episode, but not if they're part of the main cast. Hell, just have them speak! I'm sure I'd love Chunky's kids. I probably won't, but let's say I will for argument's sake. But one doesn't speak at all in episode 1, and the other only has 1 speaking role, which isn't even his own words.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest.
It's a line from Hamlet, of all things. I shouldn't have to explain how much of a travesty this is to basic storytelling because it's common knowledge that if a character is important, you have them talk. Imagine if, in the first episode of Seinfeld, Kramer and George just stood in the back of the set while Elaine and Seinfeld had to just carry their weight the whole time. Imagine if in the first episode of Naruto, Sasuke's only line of dialogue was just him quoting the part of Oedipus Rex where Oedipus lamented sleeping with his mom. You wouldn't say, this character should be considered part of the main cast. You'd say, wait, why are they next to the main characters in the opening? Good lord, this show's a wreck! NFTs are a bubble. I'm certain that there are many people who are willing to admit that, except probably not those who think wholeheartedly that this sort of thing is the future. And it could be, but with the amount of people raking NFTs through the mud, that simply can't be the case. To the general public, NFTs are needlessly complicated and just don't make sense. And honestly, that's valid criticism. I mean, even the name non-fungible token is just unnecessarily obtuse. And that doesn't even account for the fact that most of the popular NFTs, including Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, go for thousands of dollars despite blatantly being taken from the exact same template. People love to say that NFTs are meant to benefit artists, but it's clear to a lot of people that NFT creators such as Bored Apes really don't give a damn about artistic integrity. They have 10,000 apes, and instead of giving them their own little personalities, they just churn them out of the same template. They're low effort, but are sought after simply because they're part of a brand. And sadly, the same description could be imposed onto the show, down to the stiff, lifeless animation, the limited soundtrack, the uninspired setting, the bland writing, and the painfully obvious errors that could have been caught merely with a second glance. NFTs have the potential to do a lot of good. It allows artists that work completely digitally to profit off their work, all while allowing fans to own something that's at the very least a piece of their work. However, right now the market is being bloated by lazy products. There's literally 10,000 of these ape JPEGs, and they all look exactly the same. And no, these aren't official ones, these are all being sold by BAYC. What NFTs need are a group of tokens that have actual value. Something where it's obvious that actual effort went into making them and they're not just based on a template. A way this can be accomplished is by minting NFTs with an appealing aesthetic that's not just, oh hey, look at how ugly this monkey is. Another thing that can help is simply not being tone deaf. Think about it, TRAF is based on the group of NFTs that are having the most piss taken out of them out of any other group on the market. Not only that, despite the backlash that adult cartoons with unappealing art styles have gotten lately, they've opted to make a cartoon that can easily be mistaken for Big Mouth in the lineup. And for the coup de grace, they've made it to where you can't view the number of likes the video is getting on YouTube, which is essentially the online equivalent of tying meat on your head and running headfirst into a pack of lions. And yes, this was just before YouTube decided to remove the dislike count. Dislikes were briefly visible before TRAF made the conscious decision to hide them on their own. Down to its very core, TRAF was just doomed to fail from the start. I wholeheartedly believe that. So, does this idea have potential? Yes. And props to the creators for at least jumping at it. However, that's like the only good thing I have to say for this show. They seem to have the goal of making this the future of not just NFTs, but the whole of the internet as well. However, they're making zero effort to get anyone outside of the incredibly esoteric group that is the NFT community on board. The right play here to make their goal a reality is to be expanding outward, clearing up misconceptions and trying to make what they're doing more appealing and easier to understand to the general public. However, they're not doing that. One look at their Twitter will show that they're more focused on closing themselves off into their own echo chamber. You just can't do that while branding something as the first of its kind. This is a case where the title of something does not precede it, and you have to fight tooth and nail to make it something cool. The showrunners act as if they're taking a bold step forward, but in reality it's a painfully average product that is doing absolutely nothing for the market that it lives in. The first NFT-based cartoon had the potential to make a bubble into something special, but unless TRAF can fix its myriad of problems in the coming episodes, it may just be another thing that helps kill the trend it's trying to help.